So what's going on guys, Kids here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the best Lepic build guide in the first Descendant. So for this build I will show you what weapons and modules you want to get. Then I will explain every single skill and show you the best reactor stats and external components. And then lastly we will take a closer look at the gameplay, so you would be able to get the best results and highest damage possible and much more. And just before we start, let me introduce you guys to today's sponsor, Instant Gaming. They are a website that provides you with a brand new and simple way to buy games at amazing prices. You can get the best PC, Mac and console games with up to 70% off. Instant Gaming makes it very easy to save while purchasing games within a single site. Just choose the game you want to play. For example, I want to buy the new Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. So we just click on Add to Cart, then click Pay. Then we input our details, and then when the payment is complete, we will receive the game's activation key. And finally, we just simply go to the Steam and copy and paste the key in, and it's that simple. We just saved €9 and this was only 23% off. There are plenty of other offers that go even up to 70%. So what are you waiting for? Check out Instant Gaming by clicking my link in the description box, and let's get right back into the video. So then let's move over to the Lepic build. He is arguably one of the easiest Descendants to play, as his skills are very simple to understand and use. Overall, Lepic is a grenadier that excels at AoE damage. The simplicity of Lepic's skills and passives mean that you can do pretty well even if you're new to the game and don't understand anything about how Lepic works. However, once you get used to the basics, there are a couple of extra things you need to keep in mind to truly get the most out of him. So firstly, make sure to use overclock skill as much as possible. This will provide you with a skill power boost and cause your grenades and overkill shots to set enemies ablaze, which will burn them for extra damage. This overclock will last for a long time, but with our specific modules, we will make it last pretty much 24/7. And second of all, you need to know by default, the overkill skill will drain your MP while it's active, regardless of how many shots you fire, and activating the overkill has a long cooldown. Therefore, you should ensure that you have a decent amount of mana saved up before activating it to make sure that you don't run out of mana points almost immediately. And it's even possible to equip a Transcendent module to make this skill a much higher DPS, which I will explain later in the video. So now let's take a look at our skills. The first passive skill is called the Close Call, that recovers HP when taking fatal damage, but keep in mind that it has a long cooldown. Then our first active skill is the Grenade Throw, which throws a grenade forward at the enemy. Then the second one is Overclock skill, that increases all skill ATK and adds a burn effect to the grenade and overkill for a set duration. Then the Traction Grenade skill, which will throw a traction grenade forward to pull the enemies within range. And finally we have the Overkill skill, which fires a powerful shell at the enemy. The shell is maintained at the landing point for a set period of time, which will inflict constant damage. Then now let's take a closer look at our build modules. Your module capacity cost limits how many modules you can equip, and they can be upgraded as you level up your character. Different modules have different capacity costs, which generally depends on how powerful the module is. This is a balancing system to prevent players from only equipping the strongest modules and having a totally overpowered character. But it's still important to know, when equipping modules, make sure that as many modules as possible are in a slot with the matching icon. This will give you 50% reduction on the module capacity cost. So here we have the best modules for your leveling build. You should be able to get this leveling setup by approximately level 25 to 30. This is a good base setup to have before preparing to farm the max level setup. So we want to get the HP concentration, which increases the max HP and skill critical rate. Then the non-attribute master, which improves the skill power with additional boost to non-attribute skill power. Then the tactician, that significantly improves the skill power. Then energy collection, which gives you the ability to steal mana from enemies. Then regeneration boost, that gives you this time the ability to steal a small amount of HP from enemies. Then dual claw, which attacks using dual claws during a sub attack. This also increases your max module capacity. Then strong mentality, that makes that now your skills are much cheaper to use. And finally the nimble fingers, which will reduce your skill cooldowns. And just before we move on to the endgame setup, let me quickly explain why are some skill modules empty, like here for example. So basically, this slot modifies our skills, but the problem is that all the modified variants are worse for our build than the original. Therefore, we leave the slot empty, because there's not a single modifier in that slot, which could help our build. So it doesn't really matter what we do in that empty space. And after that is done, now we are ready for our max level module setup. So for the endgame build, I recommend to use the increased gain, which makes that your MP aka mana is no longer consumed when the overkill is active. It works that you will consume MP when attacking with the overkill, but recover that same MP when the overkill lands a critical hit. The increased gain module makes your overkill skill considerably easier to use, since it will no longer constantly drain your MP when active, but only when firing the overkill shots. If you don't have this module yet, then the build will still work fine, but you will just need to be much more careful when using the overkill. So then with that out of the way, the next modules we want to get is the HP concentration, which increases your max HP and skill critical rate, then the non-attribute master, which improves skill power with additional boost to non-attribute skill power. Then Technician, which significantly improves the skill power. Then Energy Collection, that gives you the ability to leech some mana from enemies. Then Regeneration Boost, which this time gives you the same ability but to steal HP from enemies. Then Dual Claw, that attacks using dual claws during a sub attack, and they also increase your max module capacity. Then Strong Mentality, that now make your skills much cheaper to use. Then Range HP Calculator, that improves the range of your skills and slightly improves your HP. Then Skill Cost Optimize, that reduces skill cooldowns and slightly reduces the skill cost. Then Nimble Fingers, that will reduce your skill cooldowns. And finally the Entropy Acceleration, that will slightly boost your max MP and skill critical hit damage. So then finally, let's take a closer look at the best weapons and stats that we should use. So then for our build, the Thunder Cage submachine gun is the ultimate weapon. This firearm emits an electric shockwave that creates the appearance of thunder being directed at the enemy. When defeating an enemy, the defeated enemy has a set chance to discharge the electric shockwave that deals additional damage to nearby enemies. This is a high DPS weapon with a quick fire rate, which augments our character very well. Here are the best ones, like the Hawkeye, Reload Concentration, Rifling Reinforcement, Concentrate Support Ammo, Action and Reaction, Marksman, Weak Point Control, Weak Point Sight and Fire Rate Up. Then second of all, we have the Nyzeri's Devotion, that is a hand cannon which is great for a secondary weapon. It works especially well if you're good at aiming and are confident at hitting enemy weak points. Hitting an enemy's weak point with this weapon will reduce their defense by 30% for 3 seconds, which indirectly buffs the damage of all of your skills. And carefully aimed shot from the Nyzeri's Devotion makes this weapon an amazing for a single target boss fight. And lastly, another great secondary weapon that can help to buff our damage if you hit the enemy weak points is the Afterglow Sword, which is a sniper rifle. By hitting an enemy's weak point, it will inflict death propagation, which will improve the weak point damage by 5% per stack. You can also get extra critical rate when hitting commanders and other elite enemies with this weapon. And then last but not the least, we need to quickly look into the best reactor stats. So your reactor is very important item that determines your skill damage and can also include extra modifiers that buff certain aspects of your build. The better your reactor is, the more damage your skills can deal to the enemies. I recommend prioritizing using a reactor with a high skill power and a sub attack power. Look out for a reactor that buffs fire and or tech skills, as most of the Lepic skills will fall into these categories. After that, you can look out for reactors with a boost to your skill critical hit damage, which will improve the amount of damage dealt when you land a critical hit. Our Lepic's attribute is fire and his skills use tech and singular, which means that you want to pick a reactor with a burning singularity, which will boost your fire and singular type, or perhaps the burning mechanics, which as well will boost the fire and tech. Because our build focuses on its damage, it's better to spec into skills that we can use more often. Therefore, we want to select the burning mechanics reactor. Any other reactor will do as well, until you have a proper version of the best one. And finally, we have the external components. With your external components, you will be somewhat subject to RNG, at least until you've played the game long enough to find basically every single possible combination with a good stat roll. For this build, I generally recommend to get components with stats in max shields, max HP, HP recovery and defense. And that's about it. So with that said, I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or suggestions, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and not miss any more amazing content. With that said, you have an amazing day and I will see you in the next one. So take it easy, peace.